All right, well, it's 8:30, so we're going to get started. I wanted to thank you for joining us for today's webinar, Keys to a Successful Virtual Fundraiser. And this webinar is presented by Smith Marion Co. We're an accounting firm with offices in California, Tennessee. We specialize in nonprofit audits, 990 tax returns, HUD, and housing authority audits, and business and individual tax returns. Before I introduce our speakers, I want to cover a few housekeeping topics. Today's webinar is being recorded, and we will share the link with you after the event is complete and the slide deck. We welcome you to revisit the content yourself and share it with your colleagues. We also invite your comments and questions. Please look at the Q&A chat box on your screen. If you can think of a question for our speakers at any point, just type it in there and I will either pose it to our speakers at that time or hold it for the discussion period at the end of the event. Today's presenters are Kendra Dockham. She is a CPA and principal at Smith Marion Co. Kendra specializes in nonprofit audits and reviews. She works closely with nonprofits of various sizes and is passionate about partnering with her clients for an excellent working relationship. She is on the board of Susan G. Komen in the Inland Empire. Kendra loves vacationing with her family in Pismo Beach. Hannah Baldwin is our firm administrator at Smith Marion Co. Hannah has been with our firm for 7 years. She specializes in human resources, employee coaching, and process improvement. Hannah has her SHRM-CP license and her PAFM license. She is also a Lean Six Sigma Green Belt. She loves cooking and rollerblading with her family. I am Crystal Conrad. I am the audit coordinator here at Smith Marion, and I have been with Smith Marion for 3 years. And I love hanging out with my family. I have 2 little girls, so we love doing crafts and sewing. And then we have Jill Eaton. She is the executive director at Susan G. Komen Inland Empire. Jill graduated from Cal State University San Bernardino with her Bachelor of Arts in Business Administration. She has a certificate in nonprofit management and fundraising from UC Riverside. Jill is an expert fundraiser and has successfully organized and hosted several virtual fundraisers over the past year for Susan G. Komen. Jill has experience in public relationships and fund development. All right, so at this time we have a poll I'm going to put up for you guys if you want to take a couple seconds to answer that. What has your experience been with virtual fundraisers? I've never put on a virtual fundraiser. I've put on 1 virtual fundraiser. I put on 2 to 4 virtual fundraisers, or I've put on more than 5. I'll give it just about 15 more seconds for people to get their answers in. All right, and I'm going to end the poll. So it looks like we have a pretty good spread. We've had somebody who hasn't put on any, and a couple people that have put on a few of them. At this time, I'm going to hand the floor over to Hannah Baldwin, who's going to tell us why we don't need to fear virtual events.
Good morning, everybody. I'm Hannah with Smith Marion Co, and I hope you're all doing well today. I'm excited to talk about this topic with you because over the past year, I've seen a huge shift in the way we approach technology, not just in our daily lives, but in the workplaces. I think if you had asked most people a year ago or 2 years ago if they knew about Zoom, people's familiarity was pretty slim. But now we have a lot of people who are very familiar with Zoom, who've been using it a lot, and who have been utilizing these tools. And so while putting on a virtual event can seem intimidating, there is definitely things that you can do to make it easy, I say stress-free. We're always going to have a little bit of stress, but to reduce stress when you put on your virtual event. So why virtual? Yes, things are opening back up. And I know probably a lot of people are wondering, why even do a virtual event? We're, getting more and more open as each day passes. But as we open back up, people are still not completely comfortable. People have different levels of comfortability. And so doing a virtual event allows your attendees who might not be quite ready yet to come to, a large event to attend event virtually. Hybrid events are also a really good way to still get that promotion and still get that viewing by people who would be unwilling to come to an event in person, but then you can still do the in-person event. So hybrid is a really good option. No chair setup. You don't have to, when you do the virtual event, you don't need to set up chairs. You don't need to coordinate with a venue. It can save you a lot of time. The costs are lower with virtual events. You can spend a lot on a virtual event, but you're also not hiring a venue, and you are not, paying for the caterer. You're not paying for, maybe some lighting, or all those other things that you would pay for when you did an in-person event. Your reach is further. You're able to have people attend from across the country who otherwise wouldn't fly out to attend your event. And when you record the event, that allows you to reuse your content. And that's something you want to do, is you definitely want to record your events and use that content again and again. You can take snippets of it, but it's just a great way to not have to reinvent the wheel. Just a little graphic. If you could go back, Crystal,
Sorry,
real quick.
Hannah.
It's okay. So they polled a group of nonprofits and, surveyed them to see how was your event attendance compared to in-person events. And so you can see that 14% had more, 26 had slightly less, 20% had slightly more, 20% had the same, and another 20% had much less. And I chalk a lot of that up to spreading the word. So if you do a really good job of telling your attendees and your donors about the event and making sure to get the word out, you can definitely get those numbers out. Next slide, Crystal. So planning a virtual event is like any other event. A really important thing to remember is, regardless of the format, it's all about the mission and vision of the organization and why you're doing the fundraiser. And so whether it's in person, whether it's hybrid, whether it's virtual, it's the why behind it. And so the details and the format can sometimes be the focal point, and it's easy to get so focused on all those little details that you forget that at the end of the day, it's all about the mission and the purpose. So remember those and make sure you keep making decisions with that in mind and sticking true to the mission and the purpose of your organization. And then we build in all the other things, like the logistical things, and how are we going to get people to attend? How are we going to get people to sign up? How is this going to work? And so start with what you know first, and then you're able to build in the new stuff. So I'm going to go through the steps to planning a virtual event. Step 1, you want to assemble your team. You want to establish your goals. You want to set your budget. You want to select your platform. You want to create the event and the event landing page. You want to promote your event. You want to set your agenda. You want to run through logistics. You want to do an event run through. And then you want to follow up with the people who attended and the people who didn't attend.
So Hannah, on for virtual events, my advice is also make sure if you're using a platform, you're aware of what are their policies as far as the information they collect on the people who attend, how is that information shared. A good platform or means will be able to tell you that. They should be able to let you know what their privacy policies are.
Absolutely. That is extremely important. That way you're not having people signing up and then having their information sold and spread around. That could cause people to be very upset.
Also, do you get to retain the material when you use that platform? Or is it now their property? So you want to make sure you're clear on those rules as you're going into this.
Crystal, can you launch the poll?
Yeah, we have another poll here. How many volunteers, team members would you have available to assist you with putting on your virtual fundraiser?
Hopefully not too many people select. It's up to me. My team of one.
We're going to give it about 15 more seconds for anybody else who wants to get their vote in. All right, so it looks like, you know, it's pretty spread out, but the majority of people have under 5. But, you know, there's, you know, some people that have a good amount of people as well. And, you know, one person that's like, it's just me.
So that's something that's definitely going to affect the decisions you make when you're planning your event, because, you know, working as a nonprofit, when you're relying on volunteers and maybe you don't have other paid team members, maybe, you know, you're the executive director and you receive a salary, but maybe you don't have paid helpers and you're relying on volunteers. That's where I recommend that you get some help and that you get an event coordinator, because that way it's not all landing on your shoulders. You know, volunteers all have different lives. They all have different schedules. A lot of volunteers work full time. And so keeping that in mind, that way you're not burning out your volunteers. So the team, I did a basic team right here. You can get way more complicated, but these are the people I say you definitely want to have on your team. You want to have your host. You want to have your Crystal, who she's moving the event along, or he is, you know, making sure you stick to the agenda. They run the event, field questions, and they push it along. You want the speaker and the host to be the same person. You also don't want to be the person putting on the event and hosting. It's a lot of different things you're thinking about at once. Presenters, that's panelists, presenters, performers, anybody who's going to be in front of a camera presenting anything. Sometimes your presenters won't be live. Sometimes it'll be pre-recorded material that you're playing, but regardless, you're going to need presenters. IT, this is going to be the go-to person for tech issues during the fundraiser. You don't want to be in the middle of the fundraiser presenting and you have speakers messaging you saying, I can't get logged in. You want to have a point person who's set aside ahead of time, who everybody knows this is who you talk to if you're having any issues. This person doesn't have to be paid. You might know a college student, or you might know a very mature high school student, or an adult who, you know, is very familiar with the platform that you're using, who's good with that kind of stuff, who's willing to volunteer their time. Marketers, that might be you too. This is the people responsible for promoting the fundraiser. Use your volunteers for this too. You know, make sure that you're, you know, relying on, you know, volunteers and donors to also push out your event, but you still need one person who's actually going to be sure that the marketing's getting taken care of. And then you have the event planner. They oversee the logistics, they oversee the technology, and the execution of the fundraiser. So they're not in charge of all these things. They're just in charge to make sure that it happens. So they're the point person for everyone else to go to if they have a problem or they have a question. Next slide. You want to set up your fundraising goals, just like any other fundraiser. Set your goals, figure out how many people you want to have attend. Make sure you know the purpose of your fundraiser. And your goals should always line up with the mission and vision of your nonprofit. And make sure you don't have to go back, Crystal. Make sure you publicize those goals to your donors. Make sure, you know, if you have a goal of $300,000, make sure you let them know that. So there's a lot of kinds of virtual events. I would say the easiest is just a simple, straightforward Zoom event. That's, you know, pretty straightforward, pretty easy, live streamed, or you could even pre-record and just play it. But there, you could do a virtual run. You could do virtual trivia. You could do a pre-recorded program. And there's a lot more. If you look up types of virtual events, you're going to find all kinds of like awesome, crazy, creative ideas. But if you've never done a virtual event before, I would say start with what's easy. Next slide. Okay, cost to consider. So these aren't the costs you have to spend, but this are some things you might want to consider spending on. Is your virtual event platform going to cost anything? A lot of them do, but there are some free platforms out there. A lot of them aren't very expensive, but you can be getting into some really complex platforms that do a lot of different things and are more pricey. But I mean, Zoom, you can put on, Fundraiser with Zoom for around $200 with up to 500 participants. And so it's not a big cost when you compare that to, getting a venue and doing all that stuff. Your landing page, some landing pages you can just do right on your website. But maybe you don't have, the tech support to do a website landing page. Maybe instead you want to use a website like Event Create to do a landing page. You can very easily and very affordably create a landing page that just, links everybody to the site information, and they can see how much you guys trying to fundraise, what's the purpose, and all kinds of different promotional things about your event. If you're able to get funds before your fundraiser, that's awesome. Some fundraising tools, online auction software. You might want to do a text to donate. Most of you probably have an email marketing tool like MailChimp or Constant Contact, but if you don't, I highly recommend you get one. Registration, all these are different things that, they cost money, but usually it's minimal fees. Giveaways and swag bags. Maybe you're planning on sending something out to every person who's registered. That way, during the event, they might have a little banner or a little flag, something they can take a picture with for social media. Speaker fees. A lot of times speakers donate their time. Sometimes they don't. Are you going to be doing speaker fees? Are you going to be giving gifts to speakers? And then speaker equipment. This can be very beneficial, especially if you're concerned that your speakers might not have a good place to be doing their recording, or maybe they don't have a good mic. You could provide the webcam, the headsets, and the lighting for them. And all three of those things you can find on Amazon for under $30 a piece. So if you're interested, you can feel free to message me later and I'd be happy to send you some links. But 84% of organizations who had already put on virtual events said they spent less on virtual events than in-person ones. Next slide, Crystal. Okay, determining your platform. So there's a couple different platforms that I've listed here, but there are endless platforms online. Like Kendra said, you really want to put some research into your platform, make sure that you receive your recorded content after the fact and learn a little bit about how they work. Zoom is nice because people are used to Zoom. It has easy registration. It's good for live events. You can stream on Facebook. Then there's Stream My Yard. They integrate with Zoom and they're good for real-time donations. So if you use them, you would need to use Zoom also. So it'd be two platforms, but it's a way for people to be donating during the event and having interaction with each other during the event.
So does that platform then, it has the ability for people to put in their information, they collect the donations for the nonprofit?
Yes, it collects the donations for the nonprofit. And they can actually, they wouldn't view it through Zoom, they'd view everything through Stream My Yard. So you as the presenter would be in Zoom, but they would all be in Stream My Yard watching the presentation as it was happening and able to interact and donate and all that. Give Butter, it is free. It's an all-in-one platform. It allows for peer-to-peer fundraising, campaigns, live streaming, and they also have donation capabilities. So this one is designed for nonprofits. And then there's Run the World. This one's free for up to 500 people. And once you have 500 people registered, then there's a price. You can do registrations through this program, and they have good interactive activities like speed mentoring. So if you wanted to have a portion where people got a chance to interact, you'd be able to do that. And they would do a speed mentoring where people get paired up with people who attended the conference. So those are just a couple. You can look up more, and there's going to be a whole lot more, but I just kind of want to provide it, some to you to get you started. Then you're going to create your event. You want to select your platform and schedule the event in your platform. And then think about what you want from your attendees. So do you want their address? Do you want their email? What kind of information do you want to collect? And make sure that you're setting up those questions from the get-go so that you're not getting a bunch of registrations and then realizing that you didn't collect the information you wanted to collect from them. Review it. Make sure the time's correct. Make sure the time zone's correct. the date, all those things that it's really easy to mess up when you're just in a hurry. And then set parameters. Is it going to be on demand? Is it going to be live streamed? So, and when you're doing your event creation, all those things you want to be working on in the very beginning when you set up your event. Most platforms will let you edit it afterwards, but from the get-go, it's good to have all that set up. Then you want to create your event landing page. So like I said before, you might have the capability to build this on your website, or you might be able to get whoever's in charge of your website to add a landing page for you. But if that's not something that you know how to do or something you're able to do, you can create a Facebook page specifically for the event, or you can use a program like Event Create. The nice thing about the landing pages is it creates excitement around your event. Then you want to promote your event. I'm sure you guys are all super, savvy with how to promote events, but I'm just going to run through a couple things anyways. There's a lot of different things you can do. Social media, blog posts are good, old-fashioned mailers, advertising. You can apply as a nonprofit for a $10,000 grant to receive Google Ads. And so that's awesome if you're able to get some Google Ads about your event. Email is excellent. And 70% of marketers said email has been their best way of getting people to register for the event. So make sure that you're not just sending out the email once, but that you're sending it out possibly, 3 or 4 times, going, okay, we're going to have this event. Here's a reminder about the event. And then that last chance email reminding people to register is super important because people tend to register for things about 24 hours ahead of time.
I know that some of the agencies that I work with that contact me about fundraisers, the one that seems to be most effective is they blast out the initial email, but then their whole team, their staff, starts personally reaching out to each of the attendees going, hey, did you see this? We really, really want your support. We're looking forward to seeing you. And it's really hard when it's somebody personal within the organization contacting you to ignore it.
Yes, that's true.
Whoops, didn't see that one. So the mass mailer one, the one that goes under the general mailbox, that one's kind of easy to ignore. But when it's followed up with a personal contact to you, being on the receiving end, I know that one's hard to ignore and not respond to. So I would say put that personal touch in the follow-ups.
Oh, that works for me. If I get a personal email asking me to attend, I don't want to be the person to say no. So.
Or just a couple of personal phone calls right before and just say, we didn't see your name on the list, or perhaps you haven't registered. Can I register you today right now?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they get me when they call me on the phone.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah. And then notifying local media. So use your local media outlets so you can get it put in the newspaper. That's a really excellent way to get a further reach than just your regular donor base. Next slide, Crystal. Oh, looks like it's giving you some trouble. Then you're going to set the agenda. So again, back to the mission and goals. Bring everything back to that. You want to be sure that when you're setting the agenda, you're considering that you could do all kinds of fun things to have a really fun event. But remember, it's about the organization. It's about helping people understand who you are and the good work that you do. So I don't donate because people did something super fun and awesome. I donate because I heard some story about the organization and I'm super passionate about what they're doing and I want to get behind it. So that's just, something to remember is that, it can feel intimidating, like, oh my gosh, I have to put on this amazing thing. It's like, man, you just have to make sure people are able to connect to what you're doing. How are you going to engage the audience? That is something you want to think about. Having a lot of dead time is a way to lose people. So making sure that you're filling each moment and you have each moment planned out. Something that you can do is between speakers, have some live music. So maybe you have a student from the high school or somebody who wants to donate their time to, play the violin or sing a song or something like that in between each session. that's a really good way to keep people engaged. Or dance. There's a lot of dance companies, you know, and a lot of college students are involved in dance companies. And so a pre-recorded, you know, dance video that you can play in between segments, that's a really good way to keep people from having dead time. Deciding, are your speaker sessions going to be pre-recorded? Do you want to have live speakers, or do you want to pre-record your speaker sessions and play the video? I would say a good way to decide what to do is how confident and comfortable is the speaker with speaking? Is it going to be better for them to have to pre-record it, or are they going to feel very comfortable with getting on a virtual, you know, event and speaking in front of everybody? Will you have live entertainment? Something else to consider. Concerts are a way people sometimes do fundraising, is by doing a live concert virtually. How long is the event going to be? Are you going to have breaks? So I'd say do a short break every 45 minutes. And during that break, you could play a video about the organization. So that way it's not just dead time. Don't give your speakers too long to talk, because people tend to run out of things to say, and the audience starts to get, you know, distracted and not as engaged when they talk for too long. And then make sure that you build in the ask more than once. So don't wait till the end of your program to ask for donations. Make sure that you have multiple times where you're telling them how to donate, where to donate. It's a fundraiser. So making sure that you give them plenty of opportunities to donate and they know how to donate is super important. And then here's the logistics. There's all kinds of things that you can think about when you're thinking about logistics, but are you going to do live performances? Will you have a silent auction? Are you going to send goodie bags? I know people sometimes send, you know, cookies. So they'll get a cookie service and they'll order cookies for everybody in attendance with their logo on it and have them sent out to all the attendees to arrive on the day of the event. Sometimes people do goodie bags and put them in the mail or hand deliver them. But again, when you consider these things, make sure you ask yourself, do I have the amount of volunteers to do this? Do I have the help that I need? Because that's an extra thing that maybe isn't the most important way your time can go, or maybe it is. You just have to decide that for yourself based on the amount of resources that you have and the amount of volunteers you have. Are you registered with Amazon Smile? If your nonprofit is registered with Amazon Smile, you can make sure to ask the attendees to set their Amazon Smile to your nonprofit so that when they purchase from Amazon, an amount of the proceeds are donated not by them, but by Amazon back to your nonprofit. Have you told your speakers what to wear? Have you instructed them on, lighting and to sit in a quiet room? You have to remember that a lot of your speakers might not be used to doing a call like this. They might not be used to doing a virtual presentation. So make sure you have a sheet or something to give them and you talk them through and make sure they feel comfortable and prepared. Are you going to be charging for your event? Some people decide not to charge for virtual events and virtual fundraisers. One thing to keep in mind is that a good amount of people who make their fundraising goals, 50% of nonprofits that have met their fundraising goals have found that charging for those events did increase the amount they were receiving in donations. And so, think about those kinds of things when you're setting your ticket prices. Are you going to have sponsors? Sponsors is a great way to be able to get additional funds. And also people want to sponsor. Businesses like getting their name out there. And so you might think of sponsors as only something you're going to do with an in-person event, but there is a lot of opportunities for sponsorship with virtual events. What are the giving options going to be? Are you going to do a text to give? Who's providing your IT support? Are you going to be live streaming, or are you going to be pre-recording your event and playing it on demand? And did your presenters send you their PowerPoints in advance? So if they're doing PowerPoints, make sure that you're collecting everything that you need from them up in advance. Then the week of the event, you want to prepare your speakers. You want to work out any technical difficulties in advance. You want to make sure that their computer's going to, log on to Zoom correctly, or WebEx, or GiveButter, any of those other platforms. Make sure you send a last chance to register email. Make sure you collect your agenda, your PowerPoints, any other materials you need to put together, and that you have those, and that you send all your materials to anybody who's going to be involved in putting the event on. And then the day of the event, have everybody sign on early. So you make sure everybody's there and everything's working. You can decide how much, how far in advance you want them to log on. About an hour to half hour is usually good, depending on your group. Next one. And then follow up. Make sure you thank your attendees and make sure you reach out to the people who didn't attend. That way they can get a recording of the event and information on how to donate. You can do a social media post, and make sure you thank your sponsors and your volunteers.
Well, thank you, Hannah, for putting on virtual events sounds like a lot of work. Do you recommend that organizations hire an event planner?
I would say that it definitely depends on how much help that you have. So I would say if you are putting it on with a small group, definitely hire an event coordinator. That way you have somebody who's also looking at everything. They're meeting with you. They're making sure that all these things are covered, and then you can focus on the main, mission, vision, gathering the volunteers, getting them engaged, getting donors excited, and you have somebody else who's just dealing with logistics.
Thank you. We don't see any questions right now, but we will have time at the end as well for questions. Now I'd like to introduce Jill Eaton, Executive Director at Susan G. Komen Inland Empire. Jill, can you please tell us about the work that Susan G. Komen does?
Yeah, so my name is Jill Eaton. Well, first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to participate today. I'm excited to be here to talk about what we do and also to share how we have engaged in virtual events. But Susan G. Komen is the world's largest breast cancer organization, funding more breast cancer research than any other nonprofit in the world. We have funded over 1.1 billion in breast cancer research, and we have provided we have provided financial assistance to more than 220,000 breast cancer patients while they're going through treatment. Here in the Inland Empire, which is the area that I oversee, you'll hear the words, there'll be more than 2,300 women that will hear the words that you have breast cancer. And so what we do here is we raise funds to make sure that, that those needs are met here locally. And so by doing that, we have to host events and do fundraising. So I'm excited to be a part of this and to talk to you about what we've done.
That's truly amazing. Thank you, Jill. Now we're going to hear from Jill about fundraising the easy way. So we have a few questions for you.
Okay.
I hear you've been doing a lot of virtual events. Were you doing these before the pandemic or as a response to the pandemic?
We are actually doing that. We actually did a few virtual events, but not to the degree of how we've engaged them after the pandemic. So it's kind of a yes, and a yes, no to this question. But in response to the pandemic, we had to turn every single one of our events into a virtual event, including our walk, which is the most engaging event that we do with the largest number of participants. So that was quite interesting over the past year. I can elaborate on that a little bit if you'd like me to. Yes. Okay.
Yes.
So we have had experience last year during 2020 in doing pre-recorded events and also live events. So our walk was an event that had 3,000 people in attendance, sponsors, and also, typically like a walk, you would go to the event and you would be there, you would have an experience with vendors, sponsors, and have a live kickoff. And here comes the pandemic, and we needed to transition that into being virtual. And how do you do that? And it did take a large number of volunteers to go ahead and change that event into a virtual platform. And so for that particular event, we changed that one to a pre-recorded event. And so what we did is we still engaged our sponsors. And so one of the things that we did is instead of having the sponsor on site at the actual location, we actually recorded a message from them, allowing them the opportunity to tell why they got involved with the organization. They also got to promote what they were doing and then also showcase them as well as their employees as to how they engaged our walk. So this really gave everybody an opportunity. Each sponsor had a designated amount of time, anywhere from 3 minutes to 7 minutes to go ahead and do a specific message. And then we also brought them back into the pre-recording at different times throughout our pre-recorded event. The walk was a pre-recorded, I call it a video. I'm sorry, I'm old school. So, and it was about 55 minutes in length. At the beginning of the recording, we engaged our typical sponsors, our typical volunteers. We had the National Charity League, which they usually came out and were a part of our activity and handed out water at the end of our event, or they managed some activities in our survivor booth, and we didn't want to exclude them. So what they did is prior to starting the actual opening ceremony and kicking off live, they did a 1-minute video with telling why they got involved in Komen, including the mother-daughter aspect of their charity. And that was the lead up to when we started our actual recording of going live. So, and I hope I'm making a little bit of sense here. Our event started, let's say your event starts at 9 o'clock in the morning. Well, you're going to have people that are going to log in earlier. So what we did is we went live at 8:58 and played music during that time. And then at 8:59, the National Charity League video showed. And so everybody got to see this message from the National Charity League. And then we went live into our video. What we also did with regards to the pre-recording of our event was we engaged our donors as well. So we had an opportunity to have our top teams at the time. We were able to show them and what they were doing, how they were fundraising, how others could go ahead and get their team engaged with the activities that we were doing. So as Hannah pointed out, we were constantly demonstrating how participants could continue their fundraising, how they could continue to do fun activities, and showing examples of what others were doing, because the fundraising did not stop at the end of this event. We still had an additional time length of 30 days after, and so there was plenty of time to go ahead and fundraise. Any other questions with regards to the walk? Because I can go into some other things as well.
Did you have people actually walk?
We actually did have people walk. So what we did is we played the recording, and then we engaged at the end and told everybody to go ahead and walk where you are. The theme of our walk was walk where you are. And so immediately after the live recorded message, we went ahead and told everybody to walk where they are, and we were live on Facebook. And so we had some of our teams engaging us on Facebook, showing where they were walking, showing what they were doing. And so I was actually managing the chat at that particular time and engaging everybody that was on Facebook and on the chat. And I also had our marketing and fund development person. She was also managing the live feed. So we were constantly making sure that we were staying engaged with our participants beyond our 1 hour live, our 55-minute live recording. And we stayed live all the way up until about noon that day. So an additional 2 hours we stayed on, but there was people rotating as to who was going to be commenting so that there was that continued engagement. For the live recorded fundraising activity with regards to the walk, what we did is, it was 3 weeks before the event. We made time to go ahead and do those live recordings, and then planned and did editing so that we could edit down the content so that it would fit in that 55-minute time block that we allotted. But what the advantage of having that live recording, or not live recording, to have that recorded message was, again, that you had the opportunity to, make edits. A lot of times when you're live, there's mistakes. And so, you could just keep recording until you got what you needed. We definitely added and included more than, got more content than we needed so that we could edit down to what we needed. So I hope that makes a little bit of sense. But so we started engaging in the live recording 3 weeks prior to the event, and scheduled that out with all of the things that we wanted to go ahead and record.
We have a question too.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you do t-shirts with the sponsors printed on them?
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. And so that was one of the benefits. So the sponsorship package that we typically would have done in person, we just needed to adjust and modify it so that the sponsors received their benefits virtually through social media. We had an online swag bag where people could pick it up. And so there's different companies out there and I can provide that information to Hannah and she can pass it out. But there are companies out there that do online swag bags. And so the coupons go in there, and that's a great opportunity for you to go ahead and seek a sponsorship, which is another revenue stream coming in. So, so that was great. And that's what we did for the walk. So, but we've done other activities as well.
So how do you make sure that everyone gets their t-shirt before the event?
So there's 2 ways that we did that. We actually had hosted a car parade where people were socially distanced. They did not get out of their car. And so we were able to give them their t-shirt, and if they were a survivor, they got their survivor goodie bag at our car parade. And then we also recorded that and included that in our virtual recording of the walk day. And then we also mailed some items out. If you were not able to make it and came from outside of the area, we mailed items to that. So one of the great things about doing virtual events and having this approach is that you can expand your reach. And we really did expand our reach. We had teams that were from Northern and Central California. So obviously they couldn't make it to the car parade or the pickups. And so we mailed those items to them, but you need to set aside a budget for that, which is pretty moderate for us in order to make that happen.
That's great.
Mm-hmm.
So what do you wish you would have known prior to doing your first virtual event?
That's a good question. I guess we were like everybody else out there in, things were constantly changing. We were constantly pivoting. And I think the team and I, we probably feel like everybody else that's on this call right now. We felt like we didn't know enough about Zoom and the platforms and the technology to make this happen, but we actually did. Zoom is very friendly, and one of the great things that happened during COVID is that I think people were very accepting that there was going to be mistakes and that there was going to be technology glitches, and there was going to be some of these things no matter what was going to happen. But what they were so engaged with was what we were telling them, the story that we were providing, and what we were doing. So our very first live event, we actually did have a hiccup. We had a sound problem, and we didn't know about the sound problem until somebody out in the audience let us know. And so we asked everybody, could you please give us a few minutes so that we can make adjustments so that we can continue to do our event. And it was great because everybody stayed on, believe it or not. I thought we would lose a lot of people during that particular time frame, but we didn't. Everybody was eager and excited to see what the next item for our event was going to be. And that happened during our kickoff, and it was a themed event. It was an 80s themed event. So everybody was dressed in the 80s and, rocking big hair and a lot of neon. And so, they were intrigued with what was going to happen next. So we didn't lose one single caller when we had that technology glitch.
All right, and then what has your turnout been compared to live events? And then we also have a question that somebody asked that is similar to that. How do you compare the virtual to a live event?
Good question. You have to set goals, because going virtual and also having a live event, your fundraising could be down, depending upon the timeline that you had and what is also happening, the surroundings, what's happening around you. Obviously, last year with COVID, with our walk, we did see less turnout with our virtual event. However, what we did see was the individual fundraising for individuals was up, but our overall fundraising was down. So the participants that were with us and participating on our event were those that were very much engaged with our mission. So you do have to make accommodations for that, and you do need to be mindful of the goals and objectives of what you're trying to achieve. I would definitely set a goal of how many people you want to see on your live event, and also like Hannah and Kendra also said, is follow-up is key, because you need to make sure that they're there. One of the other things that we did with regards to continuing on with your events is this is being recorded. So what we did is, after every single event that we did, we included an email with the link to the recording. And we also, and so then it increased your viewership. So on the day of the walk, in the beginning at 8 o'clock in the morning, the viewership was extremely low. But by the end of the day, by noon, our viewership was over 4,000 people, because each person that was sharing, each person that we were engaging was also sharing it on their platforms. So you need to also engage your participants for them to continue to share it out with everyone else, because that's how you can continue the momentum of what you built up on, and that can increase your fundraising, then also your viewership, which will result in a more engaging event and a better long-term result.
And Jill, when you see the decrease in the fundraising dollars from the virtual event, I imagine there was also a significant decrease in the amount of cost to put that.
Oh, yes. Sorry, thank you for bringing that up. But yes, there was. So by going to a virtual event, we did not have, especially for the walk, that's a very labor intense event with a lot of with overhead. So by going to a virtual event, we saw a significant decrease in cost. I would say we brought our costs down by at least 85%. And so we did have a higher return, because we did, that we didn't have to pay that overhead. And also we didn't have to have the additional staff needed to go ahead and manage those particular activities. Now, we did have a committee for everything that we did with regards to the walk. And we also had outside volunteers, and we engaged some of our sponsors that had employees that had employee volunteer programs. And so they helped us behind the scenes in some of these activities that we did. And so I would highly recommend that you stay engaged with the volunteer basis that you have, and also the different resources that you already have. And some of the resources that we used for our first virtual event is we worked with a local high school, and they came out and set up our studio at the office. And so they managed all the technology because we didn't feel 100% confident and comfortable in doing that. And so a lot of the high schools already have a media technology program at the high school. And this is a great opportunity for them to get that real life experience, and also get them some volunteer hours and credits where they need it, and also allow them to teach you on what you need to know as far as doing this in the future. So yeah, so it was great. And they had probably more cameras than we would have ever been able to go ahead and do. And they had a lot of fun doing it. So, and again, there was no cost incurred for us to go ahead and do it. And it was a very great relationship that we've established with the high school. And then they also had a team at the walk. So it was a good win-win for both parties. So that's just one way to go ahead and reduce that cost, but also see that fundraising dollars stay, because the fundraising dollars will probably be lower, but your actual returns will be higher because you're not spending that, because you're decreasing your expense ratio.
That's great. And so one last question for you. As we enter our new normal, do you still expect to have virtual fundraisers? Or are you planning on doing hybrid or fully back in person? And what's your advice for other organizations trying to decide what type of fundraisers to do?
Yeah, so right now at this time, Komen has still taken a stand to continue to do virtual fundraisers just because of the audience that we serve and our community that we serve, those that are facing a breast cancer diagnosis. We do not want to put them at any type of harm's way. And so what we will be doing is, even beyond when we're able to go ahead and engage people and go back to in-person, we will still always offer that hybrid, because it was really incredible to see the far reach that we were able to work with. And also, this also gave us an opportunity to work with some of our patients that wouldn't have necessarily been able to come out and do it live. I will say that all of our activities, by going virtual, we were able to tap into different resources. And what I mean by that is, one of our speakers actually came from Cornell. And so, and it was a breast cancer surgeon. So that expert that we were able to bring live for everybody to listen to was pretty amazing. She was basically coming out of surgery. At one point, she was in her scrubs and was engaging everybody. But if this event had been virtual, we would have never been able to have that real life conversation with her. We would have had to fly her out here, which would have been an expense. We would have had to incur so much more, but instead she volunteered her time to go ahead and speak to us, and we thanked her for that. So yeah, we will always stay with we'll probably go to a hybrid approach when we're able to do in person.
That's so great that you're able to, reach out to people that wouldn't necessarily come, be able to make it. I think that's really great. Thank you so much for sharing all of that knowledge with us.
Thank you.
All right, and now we have Kendra Dockham. She's principal and CPA at Smith Marion, and she's going to tell us about California fundraising requirements. And we have a quick poll here for you.
Yeah.
So when thinking about tax guidelines for fundraisers, I feel very comfortable with this topic, a little comfortable with this topic, nervous, or lost. I know for me, if this were me, I would be totally lost. So I work on the audit side, don't do a lot with the tax returns. So I'm going to give it about 15 more seconds for everyone to get their answers in.
So this is kind of the boring part of the presentation. It's sort of like the legalese you get to hear at the end of the pharmaceutical commercial, all the potential side effects from these wonderful things.
So it looks like most people are a little bit comfortable with this topic, and we got a little bit of nervous and a little bit of lost.
All right, well, we're just going to briefly cover some of it. What I can tell you is that the state of California has a lot of resources out there for nonprofits. They put out publications specifically for nonprofits. They have free pre-recorded webinars. In the past, they've had actual in-person webinars that are free because the state of California wants to make sure that all the nonprofits know exactly what they need to do. So anything that I don't cover here that we don't have enough time for, those resources are available, and we'll provide the links for those. So the California Attorney General has oversight and responsibility for all the charitable fundraising in California. We'll skip the rest, Crystal. Generally, what you want to do when you're looking at your fundraising activities in person and online is figure out, is there any registration or regulations around that activity? So some of the fundraising activities typically that we've done in person, such as lotteries, bingos, raffles, those fall under what constitute illegal gambling. I was kind of shocked at that. Growing up, there's always a bingo game, but they are technically illegal gambling activity. There are state regulations, though, that allow nonprofits to conduct these fundraisers. So bingo. Initially, when we started switching to virtual, I thought, well, bingo would be that'd be a great virtual fundraiser. However, if you check the regulations around bingo, everybody has to be on site. Players have to be physically present, and so we cannot conduct these online. However, if you're going to start doing these in person, make sure that you have the applicable license in the city or county where you're going to be playing the bingo. Also, watch out for prizes. Make sure that nothing exceeds $500 in value. Raffles, another great way that we do fundraising. However, this one is prohibited online as well. If you're going to have a raffle, make sure you register it in advance with the state. No tax implications possibly here, but it may be something your auditor will ask you about. Did you register your raffle? 90% of the proceeds have to go to charitable purposes, and we have to annually report the results of this raffle to the registry. Little hiccup with 50-50s, be careful with those. Only certain organizations are allowed to do 50-50, and those need to be registered and reported with the Attorney General's Bureau of Gambling Control. So the next area that we're usually doing fundraising in is called the sale of goods. Whether your goods are donated or if you purchase them, if there's any consideration given for those goods, state of California considers that a taxable transaction. Whether you're doing this online or in person, if it's happening among donors in California, sales tax and use tax applies to those transactions. So while there aren't any exemptions from sales tax, there are some rules that will exempt some, but not all purchases or sales. So the typical transactions that we see in fundraisers are foods, meals, beverages, tickets sold for food, beverages, booklets, pamphlets, event tickets that include an amount for food or beverage, rummage sales, bazaars, bake sales, carnival booths, community events, and other fundraisers. Anytime we sell merchandise through the internet, especially with our live or silent auctions, those are considered taxable transactions. Now, the amount of rules around food and beverages are lengthy. I'm not going to go into those. Just know if you're serving food, you could have sales tax involved in that transaction. Auctions, there is one exemption for homeless shelters, and that exemption can only be exercised once a year. So if you're going to do it, make it count. Make sure you keep good sales tax documentation. You might need it. And then the last couple of slides are just about online giving platforms. As we stated earlier, please make sure you know how this platform is operating. Make sure that you know their privacy policies, what they have in place to protect personal information. The last thing you want is your fundraiser to result in a donor feeling bad about their donation. And these are just the best practices, what you should look for.
All right, so it looks like we went a little over, but we can still take a couple questions if anybody has any. We don't have any that have already been asked, so if anybody has any, go ahead and type that right now.
And when we send this out, we'll send the links that'll send you to those guides online so that you can look at all of those regulations.
All right, it doesn't look like we have any questions coming in. You can always comment on our Facebook and ask questions there, and we'd be happy to answer them there as well, or give any of us a call over here at Smith Marion. We'd love to answer your questions. And I want to thank everybody for attending. We'll be sending out the PowerPoint and the recordings. We do have one question. Has anyone used Flipcause? No, everybody's shaking their head no.
Not heard of that one.
All right, well, thank you everyone so much for coming, and we'll be sending out these slides in the recording soon, okay?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Crystal. Thank you, Jill. Thank you, Kendra.
Thank you.
Thanks, Hannah.
Oh, and it sounds like a water charity uses Flipcause.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for attending.
Have a great day.
Thank you.